Raise your hand if your company that you work for is less than 10 years old. All right. Between 10 and 20 years old? More than 20 years old. All right. So I hope I have the right audience. So as you might know, your businesses exist for a long time, and maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, you were deploying some very cool technology at the time, and that cool technology is still around, and people are afraid to change it, to touch it, and probably people that did that at the time is not working at the company anymore. So basically what I would like to say is that even if in that situation, what the experience that we had over this 5-6 years doing Puppet consultancy is that those systems are the more critical ones, and especially are the systems where money is flowing through. And sometimes they're there, they need to be there, and there is a lot of money that is spent to keep them working. So I like to say to some customers that come to us and said, we want to learn about containers and all these shiny things, and said, well, all right, cool, I'm going to live to see the day when someone is going to me and I'll ask, are you running Docker? Yes, that's so old school. Why are you still doing that? That's going to happen. As we move forward on this digital transformation, there is still a lot of boring stuff around the world, right? But that boring stuff makes a lot of money to a lot of people, and it's very relevant to keep a lot of business running. It's not because nobody's talking about it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's there. We have some financial clients in Brazil, and I guess here in the US it's not that different. If you take a look at the core operation of a bank, they're still exchanging text files. I mean, I was talking to a guy there in the bank and said, where is the money? How are you going to, it's a mainframe. It's IBM. I said, and how is that saved on disk? He said, it's a column file and some text and stuff like that. And I said, all right, so you're telling me that I'm one Vim command away to putting money on my account? He said, pretty much like that. So, and we are probably going to, that's going to be there for a long time already. So I have some lessons learned, or some experiences when all these services, those types of services and systems, they don't see automation, and usually they are left behind. You know, at some point they see as a problem, so they're called a legacy, right? But I mean, legacy should be a word, a synonym of a good stuff, not bad stuff. So large organizations, you're going to have a lot of processes and business requirements, especially if your organization works in a regulated sector. So we have a lot of rules to comply, and you cannot just give up, you don't have to comply with that anymore. That's not going to happen. Regulation usually never goes away. Once it's there, it's going to stay there forever. So you need to keep that working and compliant. And as organizations and enterprises get bigger and other companies are bought and they get bigger, larger, it gets harder to make changes. So a big ship is really hard to turn. It takes a lot of time. Usually, what type of systems that are left behind? What type of systems that people are afraid to change? CRMs, ERPs, payroll, billing, invoicing, BPM, business processes, all these type of systems, they have some stuff in common. First of all, usually you are going to find all these vendors, they have been existing for maybe, I guess IBM is over 100 years, right? And so SAP, SAS, IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, and all the other companies that Oracle has bought over time, they are still very predominant, and you're going to still use their software, and it's really hard to just stop using them. On this type of environment, it's very common that you see vertical scaling. So let's just buy a bigger machine, a larger machine with more memory, more CPU, and that's it. Can we do horizontal? No, that's an option. Just buy a module for your S369 and make it bigger. And usually, the experience that I had, in the past, it's a war room situation when you need to get this stuff working. Unfortunately, I see that it's still kind of common. It's not that rare. That takes a lot of people and effort to get these types of software from these vendors working. So why they are usually left behind? Why people are afraid to touch them? Once it's done, because it's so hard and takes a lot of effort to make those systems work, especially because they are third party. Your company is not going, it's very rare that you are going to develop a system like that from scratch. Or maybe you have a system that was developed from scratch, but that system has 20 years, right? 20, 30 years, and you need to keep it working and running. They follow a do not touch policy. People are afraid to even log into the servers and something happens, and to make any changes on that because you don't know what's going to happen. You are afraid of that. Usually sometimes after it's done, it takes months to make an update. It takes months to patch the operating system. It's very common that I see some vendors that said, oh, this is validated and tested on Red Hat 6.2. And then 6.3 comes along. And they say, no, that's going to break compatibility. And you are leaving a lot of security patches behind. Because if you upgrade to 6.3, we end up on an infinite loop where the vendor says you need to patch for security, but the vendor says don't upgrade that because you're going to lose support. And you need to, I guess that's a very common situation. So when it's certain that you need to make some changes on servers and systems that are working and have this kind of profile, the plan to do that, usually it's in 100% of the cases, manual changes. You need to open a maintenance window. You need to make sure that you have a rollback plan. Usually you try to make VM snapshots. You need to start cloning virtual machines. You take every precaution that's possible to make changes on those environments, except automating it. That's the last thing to do that. So just a reality check. There are still lots of those systems out there. And there are vendors making a lot of money with them. I was talking with some colleague here that is from Brazil, also works for a very predominant oil company. And he said, yes, we are paying a lot of money for Microsoft to keep Windows 2003 at least working for us, right? So I guess there is more money in legacy stuff than in the cool new stuff. Maybe most or all of those systems completely like any sort of configuration management. They are there, people are afraid to change it, they have no clue what happened over 5, 6 years of those machines working there, and it's better than do not touch that. So we are in 2017, we have all this cool stuff around us. What can you do better? Why people don't touch those stuff? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. No one has any clue about what's going to happen if we change it. Maybe if we change it, we probably think that's not going to be any problem, but the vendor on its manual said the configuration file X needs to be like this, you need to make a small change in that. Then for some random reason you have a problem, they see that the file is not compliant with their procedures, and the problem is actually not related with that. Then they say, no, you are not following our procedures, our documentation. So then we begin to lie to us, right? So let's wait. It died. It's not going to die. Next time you do it right, maybe it's not worth the effort. But you are going to still get audits and checks because you are probably working in a regulated environment. So how can we improve that? How can we move away from that? Then we get Puppet. Puppet is all about state until yesterday. Now we have SSH again in a loop. So feel kind of betrayed about that. We define what we want. Puppet help us get there and keep it consistent. The problem is after years and years of changes and what have you over upgrades on top of it on the other, you have no clue what happened on those systems. You have no clue why the files or packages or services are there. You just hope that they keep running and don't give any problem to you. So the effort we have here, usually you are going to see this called a brownfield deployment. We need to reverse engineer the current state. We need to figure out what's there, And we see that that's still relevant. I mean, I wasn't aware of the Puppet Discovery tool until yesterday, as most of you weren't. And most of the project that I work with, it's to do exactly like that. We need to figure out what's there. The first questions that I ask it is because we need to get an agent there. So people are afraid to install an agent. They have no clue about what Puppet is, what's going to change, what are the dependencies, what the impact if I put there. If I put that agent there, am I going to lose the support of my vendor? So basically what makes things easy here is that, I don't know how many of you were from Puppet 3 to Puppet 4. When we got Puppet 4, we have now one single package with the agent. And all its dependencies are contained in that big one package. That makes installing the agent way easier on these types of situations where people are afraid. I can just say, no ports are open, all dependencies are self-contained, everything goes to /opt/puppet labs, you don't have anything to be afraid of. I say, all right, the conversation gets rolling. So the number 1 tool that we need to use to figure out the state is Factor, right? Factor has this very useful in many ways that we can extend it and grab information about our environment. But there are some tricks that I want to show you and some problems that you might face when you start rolling out your own Puppet automation on those types of systems. Is that readable in the back? All right. So this is a custom fact. A custom fact is basically Ruby code. It's very simple to do. This is a very simple example where we are figuring out which DNS server we are using. Believe me, I guess I've seen DNS is usually the first cause of problems because people don't do that right. And the protocol exists for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. We are just reading a configuration file, get some data, and create a file called resolve.conf. But if you come from a very more shell script school background, you are going probably to do the second option here, which is kind of bad. You are going to call a fork in a shell, run grep, then pipe awk, then pipe set, then pipe something else. And the problem is here that you are not hardly going to have like 5 or 10 custom facts. Probably you are in this situation when you need to figure out what's out there. I would guess 50 as a start. So as more and more facts and custom facts you use and more you fork shells, takes Factor longer to run, and your overall Puppet run is going to get slower. So the idea is here, stay in Ruby. It makes it faster. I know sometimes Ruby, for someone that is not familiar with it, kind of be a little annoying to program, but try to avoid using shell commands. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You need to figure out if a command is there, run a command, get its output. If it's possible, try to stay in Ruby. If it's not, no problem. But know that as facts add up, your environment is going to become slower to run Puppet. I have some use cases here, especially for Windows. I have the same example here in PowerShell. You see that it's not that different from shell script. A lot of pipes there. Same problem. Every time you run PowerShell, and PowerShell to start up is really slow. Takes 500 milliseconds just to start the process, and then to start getting your information. So it's way worse on Windows. If you have like 10 facts that each one are calling PowerShell, that's easily 5-6 seconds just to get information with some basic stuff. And second problem is it's very hard to maintain that code. You are mixing 2 languages inside one program file, right? One way that I like to do it, in case I need to use PowerShell, I like to write a module, send a file to the server, and then just call the script there. So it's much more maintainable. I don't have, in case I need to update the output, I don't have to make changes to the fact. I make changes to the PowerShell script. And if I get someone that has a better knowledge about PowerShell than me, I can just ask for help on the PowerShell and don't have to mix it with Ruby. So it makes it more productive. Another problem is usually some facts that you need to query and extract data. They take a long time to run. I have an example here that one of our clients requested that we want to know which knowledge base, which patch the Windows servers have. And, oops. Basically, this is a PS1 that calls the Windows API to figure out which knowledge base codes that are installed. And there is this line here where you run create update searcher, and this line alone takes like 2 or 3 minutes to finish it. For some reason, the MSI services on Windows began to scan the disk for no reason, and it takes a lot of time. So you were seeing an impact in the order of magnitude, like Puppet taking 10 minutes to run before it even starts, just because of factor. One idea here, in case you have some data that you need to extract from servers and it's very costly, take that out of factor. You're probably going to do that, make that a scheduled task or something like that, to run 1 or 2 times a day, and stay away with that factor. It's going to be more productive. If it doesn't change too much over time, it's easier to maintain. So some tips over those topics. Oops. So some gotchas. Custom facts are synchronized globally. So every time you run a Puppet agent, even the server is Windows or Linux, is going to get all the facts, all the custom facts. Make sure you confine them correctly. The confine is this line here. So factor will calculate the kernel fact, and then if the kernel is Windows, then this code is going to run. The set code block is going to run. So make sure you confine them properly. Otherwise, you're going to run commands on your entire environment. Factor is very hard to debug, because if you ship a script or a command, in fact, in a custom fact, and that command for some reason fails, that information doesn't come back on the Puppet report, because on that stage, the report's not getting, Puppet's not getting information from the report yet. So you're going to see that the fact's missing. And then to troubleshoot that, you need to SSH log into the server, run fact manually, get the exception, and factor --debug, and figure out what's happening. So it's very hard to debug custom facts sometimes. External facts are handy, but they are costly because factor is going to fork a lot of processes, one for each external fact. In Windows, pay attention to PowerShell. PowerShell is really slow to start up, and try to keep facts that use PowerShell outside of factor, if that's possible. There is this hack that I had to do to figure out, because I was getting so many problems on some servers to figure out, and my code was like, I have 100 servers, on 50 servers the custom fact worked fine, on 30 there was some exception there, and because there is no logs about that, I need to write another custom fact that would check if the other facts generate a log file. And if the log file was there, I know that the factor there is broken. And stay in Ruby, avoid forking, and I don't know how many of you know that there is a cache feature in factor where factor doesn't have to run every fact every time, but that doesn't work for custom facts. Doesn't work for, and that's what we need. So that's a tick there, fact 348. Probably you should take a look at it and bug someone from Puppet that they need to fix that. Now that you have your facts straight, you have a lot of information about your environment. You can carry them on PuppetDB, make decisions. Usually, I like to run mcollective to do some of that stuff, the plugin inventory. And then you begin to write some manifests, right? All right, let's write some code, and let's Puppet make changes to the environment. And now things get hairy, because Puppet's state model is a all or nothing thing, right? If you say to Puppet to manage a file, doesn't matter what's there. Puppet's going to take care of the whole file. And if there are information inside the file that needs important because someone maybe 5 years ago put a specific line there and nobody knows that, that line's gone. And so that's exactly the reason why people are afraid to roll out automation in these types of systems, because there are a lot of uncertainty what's going to happen. So we have to rescue us NoOp, right? NoOp mode, how many of you are aware of NoOp mode? I guess most of you, right? Cool. So we use Puppet agent -t -noop, and we check with what Puppet is going to do, right? What's hard about that is that when you put the agent in NoOp mode, you put all resources in NoOp mode. It's an all or nothing situation. And I'm showing some examples on how that sometimes that's hard to make it more detailed. You want some resources to be in NoOp, other resources not to be in NoOp. Let's show you some cool stuff here. Just a second. All right. Just out of curiosity, I don't know how many of you know that. How does it look inside Puppet when we are running NoOp mode? This is an empty provider where I create a fake type called myResourceType in my provider. And basically, when we run in NoOp mode, every provider in Puppet does this, right? There is this method called exists. If that resource exists, this method is going to return true or false. That's the purpose of your provider. In case it returns false, which is the resource does not exist, and ensure is present, then the create method is called. Then Puppet creates that and do whatever it has to do. In case the resource does not exist, or maybe, sorry, if the resource exists but should not, ensure is absent, then the destroy method is called. Okay? So when we run in NoOp mode, in case a resource does not exist, Puppet calls exists, and at some other layer it checks that the return value is different and shows that, all right, exists, it said me to do nothing, I'm not going to call the create method. When we are using a property, so let's say the mode of a file, each property has a setter and a getter. So Puppet runs the get method for each property and returns the current state, the current value. If you are running NoOp mode, it's going to compare what's the state, what's written in the manifest. If it's different, calls the setter there, which is the equal in parentheses value. If it's in NoOp mode, that method is not called, so nothing happens. That's how Puppet figured out what should or should not do. That said, some trivia for you guys. This will reduce just a little bit. All right. So on one side, I have class resolve_conf, which is what we call usually a component class, just going to manage the resolve_conf file. I have a resource file here. On your left, we have a profile, which has some parameters, and I'm declaring the class resolve_conf saying some parameters, right? No, nothing fancy here so far. When I run this on this server, I'm running in NoOp mode. NoOp's there, --noop, and here it is. And you can see that Puppet was supposed to change this file. Since it is in NoOp, it's different, nothing happens, right? Looks good. Now, how many of you are aware of the NoOp meta parameter? I have this line here, line 12, on the profile, when I'm sending a NoOp meta parameter for the class resolve_conf, right? How many of you think that if I remove the NoOp command on the agent, the file is going to change or not? Using the NoOp meta parameter on the class. If you're thinking too much, that's because you said, So let's see what happens. Any guesses? The file is going to be changed or not? If I remove this, if I remove the NoOp option of the agent, and the code's like this, I've sent a parameter NoOp for the class. And that's the class I'm using. So it should not change, right? Let's see. You are about to break everything. Remember that. It changed it. As you can see here, the contents changed. The file is changed. If I get there it is. This is the new file. Luckily, I'm a very conservative guy. I made a copy of the file before I did that, right? That's why we do in the old days. Make a copy of the file just in case you need it back. Don't go there just changing it for no reason. All right, so this is a very tricky situation in Puppet language. The NoOp meta parameter exists for a resource, and as classes are also kind of a resource, depending on the point of view, the NoOp meta parameter is there, but nothing happens. It doesn't do anything. And unfortunately, that's correct Puppet code. It's going to compile. It's not going to show you any warnings. But the result is very, as you saw, very surprising, right? So we can accommodate some changes here. Now I made a small change. On the resolve_conf class, I added a NoOp meta parameter for the resource file. And I'm using that variable NoOp, right? If you look closely, where is that variable NoOp coming? Because it's not on this scope, right? It's not a parameter there. I have it here. I'm passing it as a parameter here. But it's not here. Will that work? What do you think? What's going to happen if I remove the --NoOp of the command line? Any guesses? Are you brave enough to do it again? Let's see. All right, it didn't change. We are still in NoOp mode, and the resource file is in NoOp mode, right? Yet again, this is another trick of the Puppet language. Even if you're passing NoOp as a parameter of a class, there is going to exist a NoOp variable on that scope. And it's going always to be the value that you are passing on the meta parameter. So you don't have to actually declare the parameter here, the NoOp parameter. Kind of confusing. So when I began to discover this stuff, I was kind of having this problem that I need to control. I want to test the resolve_conf profile, but I have profiles that I want to apply. I need to mix it up, NoOp stuff with other stuff that I don't have to run in NoOp mode. So we can make this code look a little better and more useful with these changes here. Usually what we do is, on the profile class, we add a NoOp mode parameter, which is by default true. And for the class resolve_conf, we create an actual parameter, a Boolean parameter, and use that parameter and pass that value to the other resources inside the class, right? So now I'm explicitly setting up a parameter called NoOp mode, which is the name I gave, and then I'm on the resource file resolve.conf, I'm actually setting the NoOp for this file, for this resource. So in that case, we can keep it running without setting the global NoOp option, and that specific resource is not going to change. That's it. And then we still have NoOp here, file not changed. All right, but there are some limitations here. Imagine that you want to use some modules from the Forge, right? There are a lot of stuff that it's already there. You are going to have to change every single module on the Forge to make sure that every resource receives the NoOp parameter true or false. Because as you witnessed on the previous code, if you pass NoOp for the class, nothing happens, right? So it takes a lot of effort to do that code. So kind of not there yet. We need to make that look better. Let's see. V5. All right. Fortunately, there is a function on the Forge that exists on a module, and do not confuse the NoOp function, which is here, with the NoOp meta parameter. They are different things, right? This function does some pretty tricky stuff on the catalog. What happens is, I'm talking about this guy here. Let me show you. How many of you have heard of this module? Oh, great, new to everybody. So there's this module in the Forge called NoOp, and what it does, very simple, has one function there, which is the function called NoOp, and the trick here is, when the function NoOp is called, it's going to get all resources inside that scope and all classes that are included inside that scope and put them in NoOp mode. You don't have to call and pass the meta parameter NoOp for them. The function is going to do that and change the catalog compilation on the fly. So what I did here, and it's a pattern that we use in these types of situations where we have many machines, many servers, people are afraid to change it, people are not aware of why the configuration are there. You need to make the changes really, really careful. So on the profile, we add a parameter called NoOp mode. We keep it there. But if NoOp mode is true, we call NoOp function. So I keep the profile resolve.conf and all resources related to that scope and classes in NoOp mode. If I have a second profile that does, I don't know, create users and manage passwords and groups, and on that other profile, under that class, the other scope, I don't call the NoOp function there, Puppet's going to manage all those resources as usual, right? And as you can see, I don't have to make any changes on my component modules. So if I download any module from the Forge and use those modules on any profiles, I just call the NoOp function on that scope, and that's going to make our life way easier. Where's the terminal? All right. So I just evolving the code, and now I can keep it Puppet running, create new resources, create new profiles, but just in case I need to validate with someone, hey, I have this server here where the resolve.conf has a different IP address. I need someone to figure it out if I can change it to the standards of today, not of the past. So we can make that with confidence without breaking stuff. Okay. One last thing is this. Oh, V6. So you can follow the standard practices for Puppet in designing. You can have an Hira. In Hira, you can have like the parameters of your profile, which is your configuration of what is desired. And then for each node that you are going to validate a change, you can disable NoOp on node-by-node cases and profile-by-profile cases. So you make that very configurable. Let me show you here. So nodes, this is the server, the virtual machine I'm using. Now I've put NoOp mode false, but just for the resolve.conf profile. So I can make, all right, this looks good on this server. I can make Puppet take care of that file and move along to the next. And after we are done, You can just refactor the code, remove the NoOp from there, and all those services that were left behind, they are keep compliant and manage it, and nobody is afraid to change them anymore. All right, now the file is changed, and that's it. Okay? So some lessons learned here. Write very simple and small profiles, right? Keep it simple, keep it small and sweet in these type of scenarios where you have a lot of uncertainty about your environment when you are beginning to rolling out Puppet, and to make them no-opable. So you can switch true or false if you want to manage or not a specific profile for a specific node or groups of node. You can take advantage of hierarchy to do that for you. The main idea is that make the profile with a parameter. So we add that control flag to call the NoOp function yes or no, right? And the function is really what does the trick here. I was discussing with some people yesterday from Puppet about this, and I said, and this function needs to exist by default in Puppet. Should be in car. Every time you install Puppet, the NoOp function should be there, right? I guess I need more voices to make that happen. Otherwise, no problem. We can get the function from the forge. You can use the event inspector. So after you publish a code, you deploy a code with NoOp enabled, Puppet is going to verify in 30 minutes, worst case scenario, all your environment, and you are going to see in the event inspector on the console each server that's NoOping. So you say, all right, I have a server out of compliance here. I need to check the server. And then over time, you can going to make the small changes, feed higher data with which server should the NoOp be disabled or enabled, and you're going to get there sooner or later. So disable NoOp carefully, node by node, or profile by profile if needed. After every server is done, just remove the NoOp function of your profiles, a little refactoring, and you are done, right? One honorable mention here, how many of you have heard of Augias, the Puppet support Augias? Augias is not that easy to use, right? It's very tricky, very hard, sometimes very slow. But in this type of scenarios where you need to make precise changes, and I've seen situations where I was in charge of write some code to manage a specific configuration file, but that file, I don't remember how the application was designed at the time, was shared by another team of the organization. So I have two colliding teams, each one tried to save a cultural problem, as you probably all might guess. And they had to, so I need to put some lines there, but I cannot make the file a whole resource in Puppet. So Augias comes to be very helpful in those type of situations, where you need to change the file, but you cannot manage the entire file. It's a little hard, but that's what you got to do, right? And I have some time for questions. If someone wants to make questions, I guess. Oh, sorry. There's a mic available to us. We have time. You can think. No worry. I know that I'm between you and lunch, so I can completely understand that. All right, we have a gentleman there.
Hi, so I wanted to ask if you have found some other cool modules like that that dynamically change your code, because I didn't know that was possible.
No, I haven't looked into that again in the last couple of months. I guess the NoOp module is the right one, so probably that's the right answer. All right, I'll do the matter.
Sorry, for anybody that didn't see it, there's also a tool called Octo Catalog Diff that was presented yesterday by GitHub, and that looked really interesting to see what exactly in the catalog would change if you push that out. So anyway, just FYI.
All right. In that case, after you have loaded out Puppet and people are using Puppet, and then you're going to make a change, Octo Catalog Diff makes total sense. But until then, the change that you are trying to compare using octo-catalog diff is not there yet on your environment. So that's not going to show up the changes that you are going to see on this type of scenario. But that's a very cool tool. Use that. I have another one in the back.
Hey, so something I've run into going to brownfield deployments is if you're starting to manage something like NTP, the base NTP file has like a lot of comments in there and has like everything in a weird order, whereas Puppet will usually have like a condensed file. So trying to take the diff between those is really hard. Do you have any suggestions for like how to go through and do that in a reasonable fashion?
In that case, yeah, the files that are heavily commented, right? The diff it's completely unreadable sometimes. Algias is the answer for that, because Algias is going to like make a surgery on the file and go exactly where it needs to be changed. The file will, Algias is going to validate the file, make sure the configuration file is still consistent, and you get that for free. It's still a little harder, but I would go with Algias to do that type of stuff. If the diff is kind of on your way to figure it out. All right, another gentleman here.
Is it generally best to just start with the resources, low-hanging fruit ones, or go after as much as you can on a legacy server? And
I would recommend start with the ones that are easier. So probably configuration files, users, groups, services. If you get that right, you are going to have a lot of already. So I mean, in 1 week from having nothing to have like all your servers with some baseline automation, from a situation where on Monday you are completely in the dark, and on Friday you have a better picture of what's there. So start small, as you said, try picking the easy ones, and then you go ahead to the biggest challenges. I would recommend that. In the back.
I'm not sure if anyone else had an experience with this, but we went through a practitioner class, and one of the things that we came across was if you NoOp and you're creating a custom fact, that doesn't actually stop the fact from being created.
Exactly.
Have you done anything to, like, have you come across anything to mitigate that issue?
So that decision was made some time ago by Puppet in the community, where people decide that custom facts are considered as a plugin, so as the same as a resource type and providers, and they are synced before even factor runs. And that's on by default. And there is no way to change that. Okay. So it is the way it is, unfortunately. Anyone else? So let's have some lunch. Okay. Thank you, guys.